Okay, so let's keep working with our equivalent fractions. And now let's try to figure out what fractions would be equivalent to 1/3. So if you have your fraction strips in front of you, you can work with those. I'm going to go to our online tool so that we can work with 1/3. All right, so I'm going to put my one whole up here just so we can make sure and compare it to that. And I need my 1/3. I'm trying to find fractions that would be equivalent to 1/3. So let's go ahead. We'll go to fourths and we'll start there. Do you think fourths is going to work? Let's see. Well, when I put this first one there, I do notice that it's pretty close to 1/3, but it is a little smaller. Remember, looking at my denominators, I know that when the larger the denominator, the larger the denominator is, the smaller the piece will be. So my fourths are going to be smaller than my thirds. But I think if I put a second fourth up here, it's going to be too large. So that doesn't work. So our fourths will not be equivalent to our 1/3. Let's go ahead and try our 1/5. Before we go to it, make your prediction. Do you think fifths are going to work? Let's find out if you were right. There's 1/5. Let's count it. 2/5. So 1/5 is not enough. 2/5 is too much. So fifths did not work. Did you get that right? Did you make a good prediction? All right, what about sixth? I'm hoping sixth worked because we have not found any equivalent fractions yet. We have 1/6. This is looking good. 2/6. Yes, we found an equivalent fraction. So we can say that 1/3 is equivalent or equal to 2/6 because remember, we're looking for the same amount being covered, and it is 1/3 and 2/6. Okay, do you think eighths will work? Let's try it. 1/8. 2/8 is not enough. Let's see if 3/8 works. 3/8 doesn't work. All right, let's put those back. I have two more to try. Now we don't have ninths, we don't have sevenths, so we can't try those, but we can try tenths. These are really little. Look how little the 10th is compared to the third. 10 is a much bigger number than 3, so it means there are going to be many more pieces if we make tenths. All right, let's see, 1/10. Let's try another one. 2/10. Maybe. 3/10. You think it's going to work? 4/10. Not quite. All right, let's put these back. Now, what about 12ths? Do you think 12ths are going to work? Let's figure it out. 1/12, 2/12. Do you think it is? 3/12, 4/12. It worked. So we found two equivalent fractions for 1/3. 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6, and 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. Now remember, that's not the only equivalent fractions, but it's two that we found. So let's go back and take a look. We can say that 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6, or we could say 1/3 is equivalent to 3/9. We did not have ninths on our fractions online. So look at that, 1/9, 2/9, 3/9. Now I want you to look at the denominators here. When we looked at the denominators for equivalent fractions to a half, all of the denominators were even. But when we're looking at our thirds right here, we have 1/6. 6 is an even number in the denominator. Then we have 1/9. 9 is an odd number in the denominator. So we have a little pattern maybe going on here. Now, I also want you to be thinking about your multiplication because if we skip count by threes, let's do that now. And do you see if you notice anything with those denominators? 3, 6, 9, 12. Remember, on our online fraction, we figured out that 12ths will work. We know 6 will work, and now we see that ninths will work. Wow, okay, there are so many connections between multiplication and fractions, and I hope that you're starting to see some patterns. They will help you. Now, we've been talking about unit fractions so far. 1/2 is a unit fraction, 1/3 is a unit fraction. When we talk about only one piece, that's a unit fraction. But we can find equivalent fractions to other fractions like 2/3. Remember, for 2/3, we would need 2 of our 1/3 pieces. And let's go and explore a little bit with 2/3. Okay, so I'm going to set my 1/2 right there, and I need 1/3, 2/3. Now remember, you can do the same thing online, or you can do this with your fraction strips in front of you. All right, so 1/3, 2/3. Think about what you know already about thirds, just 1/3. Did fourths work? Did fifths work? Did sixths work? Which one of these fractions worked when we were dealing with just 1/3? That's right, our sixth works. So let's start there. We know that for 1/3, I need 2/6. So if I have 2/3, I'm going to need 4/6. So 1/3 is equivalent to 4/6. Do you think those fourths will work? Let's try it. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. It's close, but it is not the same amount. So my fourths do not work. My fifths, do you think those are going to work? That's right, they don't work either. So if they don't work for 1/3, they're not going to work for 2/3. Now remember, when you're trying to find your equivalent fractions, you can use your fraction strips to help you. Okay, so we know now from matching them up that 2/3 would be equivalent to 4/6. And we also know it would be equivalent to 6/9. All right, now I want you to think about all the things that we have learned so far about our fractions, because next week in our module 22, what we're going to do is we're going to learn a new model for fractions. We're going to look at modeling our fractions on a number line, and we're going to have to remember and pull together all of our knowledge of fractions and some of our strategies for multiplication to help us. So let's review about our equivalent fractions that we talked about today. Remember that equivalent fractions have the same value, even though the pieces may look different. They are fractions that name the same amount or part. Okay? For example, we have 1/2, 2/4, and 4/8 are all equivalent fractions. Here is what 1/2 of the fraction circle would look like. If we divided that same circle into 4 equal parts, it would take 2 of our 4 equal parts, 2/4, to equal the same amount as 1/2. If we divided that same fraction circle into 8 equal parts, it would take 4/8 to equal the same amount. And that is what an equivalent fraction is. They're fractions that represent the same amount, even though the pieces may look different. We also learned about equivalent fractions for 1/2 in the lesson. Remember that anytime you are trying to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2, you're going to have the same number in both the numerator and the denominator, because we need all of the pieces to make 1/2. Okay, you are going to continue working this week on your lesson notes. Remember, if you need any help with that, go back and watch the videos again, and then maybe we'll answer the questions that you might be having.